I am sitting in my small apartment in Phoenix, Arizona, with the late afternoon sunlight filtering through the window curtains, casting patterns on the old wooden floor. I am David Alvarez, 31 years old, working as a coordinator and supervisor for home repair services. The job isn't glamorous, but it's stable, enough for me to support myself without relying on anyone else. Today is the day before my wedding, and I'm spending the entire afternoon preparing everything. I go over the guest list one last time, checking for any missed names. There are about 80 people, mostly co-workers and a few distant relatives. I wrap the small thank you gifts, mugs printed with our wedding photo and a few chocolate bars. My hands trembling slightly with excitement. Then I hang the wedding suit on the closet door, already perfectly ironed and gleaming under the light. It looks impeccable, like a promise for the future. I stand there staring at the suit for a long time, perhaps a few minutes without blinking. A rare warmth spreads through my chest like a small flame warming me after years of coldness. From childhood, I was always overlooked by my family. My parents, Hudson and Gianna, always favored my older brother, Diego. He was the star, the pride of the family, while I was just a faint shadow. They often called me slow, unambitious, constantly comparing me to Diego, the one who excelled in school, succeeded in business, the family's golden child. I grew used to standing in the background, accustomed to never being the first choice. But now, with the wedding approaching, I feel like I'm about to have my own family, one I've chosen myself. Valeria Cruz, my fiancée, is everything I believe in. 2 years together isn't long, but it's enough for her to make me trust that true love can heal the old wounds I've carried. Tomorrow we'll get married, and for the first time in my life, I believe I won't be alone anymore. I'm smiling to myself when my phone vibrates. A message from Valeria. David, bring the wedding dress to my place right away. I want to try it on one last time, and there's something important I need to tell you before the wedding. The tone in the message feels off, not her usual cheerful self, but I don't think much of it. Maybe she's nervous or wants to surprise me with something. Women do that sometimes. Love building drama. I quickly grab the garment bag with the wedding dress, the pure white gown we picked out together, and rush out the door. On the drive to her place, my mind swirls with beautiful images. I imagine Valeria in that dress smiling at me, us embracing under the wedding lights. My heart beats faster, not from worry but from anticipation. When I arrive, I park in front of Valeria's house, a cute little place on the outskirts of Phoenix. I walk into the living room like an eager groom-to-be, full of joy and absolute trust. "Honey, I'm here," I call out loudly, holding the dress bag. The door isn't locked. I push it open, still grinning widely, completely unprepared for what awaits. And then, the scene hits me like a punch from the sky. Valeria is sitting on the sofa, not alone. Next to her is Diego, my own brother. They are intimate, too intimate. Diego's arm is around her waist, and they're laughing about something, heads close together. When I step in, they don't rush to hide it, don't panic or jump apart like in the movies. They just look up at me, faces calm to a terrifying degree, as if they've been waiting for this exact moment for me to walk in and witness it. I freeze in place. My heart feels squeezed. The air in the room suddenly becomes heavy and suffocating. Every thought in my head breaks off. My mind is a tangled mess. I open my mouth, but no words come out. My feet feel leaden, nailed to the floor. Is this a nightmare? Or am I hallucinating? After a few seconds of daze, I try to regain composure, voice trembling. "What the hell are you two doing?" Valeria looks at me for a long time, her gaze unnervingly calm. No panic, no remorse. She doesn't apologize or make excuses. When she speaks, her voice is cold and even, as if reading a prepared decision. "David, Diego and I have been together for a long time. It wasn't a fling. I called you here today to make everything clear and end things with you right now." Each word falls slowly and cruelly. For a long time, those 3 words echo in my head, like a dull knife sawing back and forth. Since when? While I trusted completely? While I thought I was finally chosen? I turn to Diego almost instinctively, hoping he'll deny it, say it's a misunderstanding, that it's not what it looks like. But he just stands there, arms crossed, face impassive, eyes neither avoiding nor explaining, as if his silence is the answer itself. Valeria continues, her voice growing sharper, no longer hiding contempt. You were the safe choice, David. But you're too ordinary. You have no future. You can't give me the life I want. Nice cars, a big house, luxury trips, a respectable place in society. Diego is different. He's strong, decisive, successful. He knows what he wants and gets it. She pauses for a beat, looking straight at me as if ensuring every word hits the deepest wound. And you, from start to finish, have always been the loser. Those words don't just hurt, they humiliate. I feel layers of my self-respect peeled away, exposed raw before them. It's not just betrayal. It's being summoned here, standing in front of them, to hear the verdict delivered coldly and publicly. I try to say something, anything, but my throat tightens. Only distorted, meaningless sounds escape. Diego finally speaks. His voice is low and deliberate, carrying the smugness of someone who always believes he's superior. David, just accept it. This is how it was meant to be. Just putting things back in their proper order. He steps closer, looking down at me, not hiding his disdain. The strong win. The weak lose. You were never a real competitor. I want to scream, to lunge at him, to punch that face right in front of me, but my body won't obey. My limbs go numb. My mind blanks, as if the entire world has collapsed and I'm standing amid the rubble with nothing to hold on to. Valeria ends it decisively, voice devoid of emotion. I'm calling off the wedding. This is the most honest way with you. Stop deluding yourself about love or family. My face pales, my head spins. I cling to one last fragile hope, almost begging. This is some sick joke, right? Please tell me you're joking. Valeria looks at me, eyes empty, not blinking once. Her voice calm to the point of cruelty. No, David. What you're seeing is the truth, whether you accept it or not. Then, as a final formality, she adds coldly and distantly, leave, or we'll call the police for trespassing. In that moment, I understand everything is over. Not just a canceled wedding, but my last faith in love, in family, in ever belonging somewhere. I clench my fists, nails digging into my palms until they draw blood, swallowing the rage. I silently turn away, leaving that house in bitterness. Stepping into the yard, I pause for a beat, looking at the wedding dress bag still in my hand. It now feels like mockery. I pull out the dress and throw it straight into the trash bin by the road, then get in the car and drive away, leaving behind the house and the life I once believed was my future. On the drive, the night wind of Phoenix rushed in through the open window, but it did nothing to cool the burning rage in my chest. My mind was blank, a dark void filled only with fragmented images. Valeria's smirking smile, Diego standing with arms crossed, looking at me like a loser. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had run dry the moment I left that place. Instead, a dull ache spread through me, making my hands tremble on the steering wheel. I didn't want to go back to my apartment right away, where the wedding suit still hung like a cruel reminder. So I turned the car toward my parents' house. A faint hope, perhaps, but at least they would comfort me, right? They were family, weren't they? This time they would take my side. They would be furious that their youngest son had been betrayed by his own brother. I told myself that, clinging to the thought to keep from completely falling apart. It was late, around 11 o'clock, when I parked in front of the old house on the outskirts. A dim yellow light glowed from the living room window. My parents were still awake as usual. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, and knocked. The door opened and my father, Hudson Alvarez, stood there, eyebrows raised in surprise. He was wearing an old shirt, his hair grayer than the last time I'd seen him. "David, what are you doing here at this hour? Your wedding's tomorrow," he asked, voice slightly irritated at being disturbed so late. My mother, Gianna, appeared behind him, a shawl around her shoulders, face worried. "Son, what's wrong? Why are you here so suddenly?" She pulled me inside and closed the door. The familiar living room with its worn sofa and family photos on the wall, most of them of Diego receiving awards, family pictures where I always stood in the corner. I sat down, hands clenched on my knees, and began to tell them. My voice trembled at first, but then the words poured out like a dam breaking. I told them everything. Valeria calling me over, the scene on the sofa, the cold confession, the way they humiliated me, and the most painful truth. That the man was Diego, my own brother. I told it all while looking straight at my parents, waiting for their reaction, waiting for an explosion of anger, for my mother to hug me and cry, for my father to slam the table and curse Diego. But no. My father sat there, face calm to the point of coldness, as if listening to the weather report. He wasn't angry, wasn't shocked as I had hoped. He just nodded slowly, then said in an even tone, "So it's happened. Calm down, son. Personal feelings aren't as important as making the right choice for the future." I blinked rapidly, my head spinning, almost unable to believe what I'd just heard. "What are you saying?" I burst out, voice shaking but rising. "I was betrayed right before my wedding, by my own brother. Valeria called off the wedding the day before. Do you understand that?" My father let out a long sigh, shaking his head slowly, eyes showing weariness mixed with annoyance, as if I were overreacting to something obvious. "Calm down, David," he said, voice low and firm. "Diego has money, status. He can give Valeria a comfortable, stable life. Her choosing him. It hurts you, but in the end, it makes sense." I froze, throat tightening. "You're saying my brother betraying me makes sense?" My father didn't avoid my gaze. He continued, voice steady, as if explaining an obvious rule. "That's life. The strong win. The more capable one gets chosen. You should learn to accept that." His words fell coldly like a knife strike. I turned to my mother, clinging to the last sliver of hope. I called out, voice lower now, "You don't think that way, do you, Mom?" My mother didn't look at me right away. She stared down at the floor, hands clasped tightly. A heavy silence stretched long enough for me to know the coming answer wouldn't differ from what I'd just heard. Finally, she spoke, voice soft but resolute. "Son, I know you're hurting. I really do." She looked up at me, eyes tired. "But you have to accept reality. Clinging to a woman when you can't provide for her only makes things uglier. Valeria deserves a better life." I felt blood rush to my head. "What are you saying?" I nearly shouted. "She was going to be your daughter-in-law. And Diego, he stole her from me, right before my wedding." But my mother didn't stop. She looked at me, voice lowering, taking on that familiar authoritative tone of family duty. "David, listen to me," she said slowly. "Don't make a big scene out of this. Don't ruin Diego's future just because you're hurt. Our family needs him to succeed. You hold back a little, sacrifice a little for your brother." Sacrifice. Again, sacrifice. The word echoed in my head like a familiar curse, and in that moment everything became cruelly clear. My parents weren't angry that I'd been betrayed. They didn't hurt because I'd been humiliated. The only thing they cared about was Diego, the family's pride. And I was just the one born to step aside. The feeling of abandonment surged, fierce and icy, sweeping away the last shred of hope I'd held. I stood up, legs heavy, voice choked. "I get it. I'm leaving." No one stopped me. No one called my name. I walked out. The door slammed behind me, the dry thud echoing into the night, like a period at the end of everything I'd once called family. On the drive back to my apartment, the suppressed bitterness finally exploded. Tears welled up again, blurring my vision. I pulled over, pounded the steering wheel, screamed alone. Why? Why did they never take my side? And then childhood memories flooded back uncontrollably, like an old film running in reverse. From a young age, Diego was always the center. I remember when I was 6 and he was 8. He won a school drawing contest. My parents threw a big party praising him loudly. "Our Diego is so talented, such a bright future." while I, even when I did well in school, was only told, "David, try harder. Learn from your brother." The best gifts always went to him first. New bike, nice clothes, even family trips. I got the hand-me-downs. My parents often said, "The family's future rests on Diego's shoulders. He'll succeed, be the pillar, the pride of the house." As we grew up, the favoritism was no longer vague. It was clear in every choice they made. Diego got to attend a prestigious university, started his business early, and every small success of his was treated like a triumph. His mistakes were always forgiven. Once when he lost money in a bad deal, my parents didn't blame him. They poured in more money to save it, gently saying, "Everyone has setbacks." But for me, it was different. If I was late to work even once for any reason, I was immediately labeled lazy, unambitious. "You're always like this, never measuring up to your brother," they'd say, as if it were a foregone conclusion. Every time I tried to speak up, to say I was trying in my own way, my complaints were shut down instantly, labeled with those familiar words. Jealousy. "Don't be envious, David. Look at your brother and learn," they'd say, as if the only difference between us was that I was inferior, never that I'd never been given the same starting line. I realized long ago that in my parents' eyes, I was never the real choice. I was the shadow, the backup. What had just happened, Valeria choosing Diego, was only the final consequence of that favoritism. I'd lived with it my whole life, but now it had pushed me to the edge. On the drive back to my apartment, the night wind still howled through the open window, but I felt nothing except the emptiness gnawing at me bit by bit. The streetlights of Phoenix blurred past like soulless streaks of light, and I wondered, what would my life be like from now on? No wedding, no new family, and now even my old family had turned their backs. I parked in front of the building, turned off the engine, but sat there for another half hour, unable to step inside. In there, the wedding suit was still hanging like one final mockery. Finally, I dragged myself into the apartment and slammed the door shut. The room was pitch black, lit only by streetlight filtering through the curtains. I collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, staring wide-eyed at the ceiling. That entire night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Sleep fled from me like an enemy, leaving swirling thoughts behind. My phone lay silent on the table. No calls, no messages from Valeria. I stared at the screen, hoping for a miracle. Maybe she regretted it, maybe it was just a bad dream. But no, not even a hint of hesitation. She had chosen and chosen decisively. I rolled over, trying to close my eyes, but the image of them on the sofa kept appearing along with my parents' words. It makes sense. My heart tightened, the pain so intense I had to sit up, clutching my chest and gasping for air. The night dragged on endlessly. Each tick of the clock felt like a knife stab. I thought about the future. Tomorrow there would be no wedding. What was I supposed to do now? As dawn broke, faint sunlight slipped through the curtains, bathing the room in pale gold. I sat up, exhaustion spreading through my body like I'd run a marathon all night. My head was heavy, eyes stinging, but I made a firm decision. Cancel the entire wedding. I couldn't drag it out anymore, I couldn't pretend. I picked up the phone, hands shaking, and started calling the guests. The list was long, 80 people, and each call was a swallow of humiliation. "Hi, the wedding's been canceled. Sorry for the late notice." My voice was dry, emotionless. They asked why, voices full of surprise. "What happened, David? Is it something serious?" I just repeated, "Personal reasons." "Sorry." Those words were like salt in the wound. I accepted all the criticism, the gossip. David got dumped. Wedding canceled last minute, must be some big drama. And the pity, but I didn't care anymore. With each call ended, I felt a little lighter, though the pain remained smoldering. After finishing the calls, the phone hot in my hand, I slumped to the floor, back against the wall. It hit me painfully. All this time, the only one bearing the burden, enduring and trying to hold everything together, had been me. Valeria and Diego happily betrayed. My parents defended the stronger one. And me, always the weak one, always striving for recognition only to end up in absolute solitude. The living room suddenly felt vast. Traffic sounds from outside seemed to come from another world. I didn't cry. I just sat there staring into space, feeling like my soul had left my body. How could I go on? Work, friends, life, all seemed meaningless now. In that solitude, I decided to leave the city. I needed a place to breathe, someone to lean on. So I drove to Tucson, where my grandfather Raphael lived. He was my last anchor, the only person in the family who had ever loved and protected me unconditionally. Grandfather wasn't like my parents. He didn't play favorites, didn't compare. From childhood, he told stories, taught me to fix things, and always said, "David, you have your own worth." The drive took 2 hours, but I went slowly, stopping a few times to breathe. The Arizona highway was arid, dust swirling, but it helped me forget a little. When I arrived in Tucson, Grandfather's small house appeared, with its lush garden and old wooden porch. I parked, got out, legs heavy. Grandfather opened the door, frail but sturdy, eyes lighting up when he saw me. "David, you're here?" He hugged me without prying or curiosity, just gentle familiarity. "Come in, grandson. I'll make coffee." He quietly prepared a meal, toast, fried eggs, fresh fruit, and sat across from me, waiting. I ate a few bites, then couldn't hold back anymore and told him everything. From the betrayal right before the wedding, Valeria and Diego on the sofa, the humiliating words, to my parents openly siding with my brother. My voice broke, tears streamed down. Grandfather listened in silence, face thoughtful, without judgment, just nodding lightly. When I finished, he placed a hand on my shoulder, voice warm. "David, stop seeking your worth in others' recognition. If they don't see it, that doesn't mean you're not valuable. Sometimes leaving isn't defeat, it's saving yourself. You're stronger than you think." His words were like a cool stream, soothing the chaos inside me. I nodded, saying nothing, just feeling rare peace. I stayed with Grandfather for a few days. Those days were like a gentle dream amid a nightmare. I helped with small tasks, fixing the fence, watering plants, sweeping the yard. We shared simple meals, vegetable soup, grilled meat, and talked about little things. Evenings we sat on the porch watching desert stars, cool wind blowing through. No grand advice, just quiet companionship. That slow pace gradually pulled me from the turmoil. I started sleeping better, eating better, and the pain faded, though it lingered. When I returned to Phoenix, I buried myself in work. Coordinating home repairs, I took extra shifts, keeping my mind busy to avoid thinking. Early mornings to late nights, calling workers, checking contracts, fixing plumbing, painting walls, anything to fill the void. Occasionally, co-workers asked about the canceled wedding, gossip spreading. "Heard you got cheated on, David?" I chose silence, no reaction, just a faint smile, and continued. Gradually, people stopped asking, and I learned to live with the scar. 3 months later, during a routine job inspecting an old house on the outskirts, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered. The voice on the other end trembled. "Is this David Alvarez?" "This is from Tucson Hospital, Mr. Rafael Alvarez. He passed away suddenly from a stroke." I froze, the phone nearly slipped. I couldn't cry, just stood there, feeling the world collapse. Grandfather, my last anchor, was gone. My mind blanked, filled only with his gentle smile. I rushed to the car and drove straight back in a numb state. The highway blurred through tears. I drove mechanically, without stopping. At the hospital, they confirmed, sudden, painless. I claimed the body, arranged the funeral. It was simple but dignified at a small cemetery. Neighbors and old friends came to pay respects, sharing good stories. Raphael always helped people, fixed things for free. He was the best man I knew. Stories I'd never heard from family, making it hurt more. At the funeral, I saw my parents and Diego arrive. They stood together, greeting guests, faces solemn but distant. Not once did they approach me, as if an unbridgeable gap existed between us. Diego glanced at me briefly, then turned away. My parents busied themselves with visitors. I stood quietly in a corner grieving grandfather while feeling acutely excluded from the family. Even in bidding farewell to the person I loved most, I was still the outsider, belonging nowhere. When everyone had left, the cemetery fell silent. Desert wind blew dry and cold. I stood alone before the grave, staring at the name carved on the stone, an undeniable truth. The last tears finally fell, then poured uncontrollably. I knelt, trembling hand brushing the stone, whispering through broken breaths, "Grandfather, what do I do now?" All the pain I'd suppressed burst forth. I cried until exhausted, lying still on the cold grass, clearly feeling that the last person who had sheltered me was truly gone. Grandfather was gone, and I understood I was alone in this world. But in that moment, amid raw pain, I felt something else forming quietly, a silent strength. I would stand up, for him and for myself. I returned to Phoenix with a heavy heart, but no longer as a defeated man. In the days after the funeral, I tried to return to my old routine, going to work, repairing strangers' homes, attempting to forget the voids grandfather had left behind. My apartment was quieter than ever. No more calls from him asking about my health. No more handwritten letters with his simple advice. I slept less, ate haphazardly, but every morning I woke up and told myself to keep going. Grandfather had once said, "Life is like a leaky pipe, grandson. If you don't fix it, it keeps dripping forever, but if you're persistent, it will flow smoothly." Those words now echoed in my mind, like a small torch lighting the way. A week after the funeral, while sitting in my small office reviewing the repair schedule for the coming week, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number, but the voice on the other end was polite and professional. "Hello, Mr. David Alvarez. This is Attorney Martin from the law office in Tucson. Mr. Rafael Alvarez designated me to handle his will. Could you come to the office for the reading? It's important." My heart pounded. A will? Grandfather had never mentioned money to me. I agreed immediately, scheduling for the next afternoon. On the drive back to Tucson, once more my mind swirled with thoughts. Would he have left anything to me? Or was it just a formality? I didn't expect much, but that faint hope made me strangely excited, as if awaiting one final surprise from him. The law office was in an old building in downtown Tucson, the atmosphere quiet with the smell of paper and stale coffee. Attorney Martin, an elderly man with silver hair, greeted me with a warm smile, invited me to sit, and handed me a stack of documents. "Mr. Rafael set up this trust 10 years ago," he said, voice steady but solemn. "The entire amount of $280,000 is designated solely for you, no sharing with anyone else." I held the will in my hands, staring at grandfather's scrawled signature at the bottom, and went still. $280,000, a figure that stunned me. Not because it was enormous, but because I had never imagined being remembered in this way. It wasn't a windfall from the sky, but a final gift he left behind. A quiet act of faith from the only person who had never turned away from me. Tears fell, not for the money, but for him. I gripped the paper tightly, whispering in my heart as if he could still hear, "Thank you for believing in me right to the end, for seeing me as worthy." I left the office with a heavy but determined heart. I didn't see the money as a lottery win. I viewed it as a final chance to stand on my own. I wouldn't squander it or invest recklessly. Instead, I resolved to build my own career using grandfather's trust and my modest savings, about $20,000 I'd scraped together from repair work. The idea had been germinating for a while, starting a home maintenance and repair service company, specializing in recurring contracts for rental properties. Nothing grand, just steady work from landlords and small apartment complexes. Phoenix was growing. Houses were sprouting like mushrooms, but many busy owners didn't want to handle repairs themselves. I knew I had the skills and experience from my old job. This was the time to make it my own. The early days of starting the business were hell. I rented a small office on the outskirts, barely enough space for a desk and some tools. Lacking management experience, I had to learn everything myself: business registration, tax paperwork, contract templates. I hunted for clients, cold calling landlords, sending promotional emails, even knocking on doors at apartment complexes while worrying about costs, hiring workers, buying materials, paying rent, salaries. The jobs were exhausting. I remember the first one, a plumbing contract for a small apartment complex. My worker messed up. Water flooded everywhere, the owner furious and threatening cancellation. I had to jump in myself, working through the night until dawn, clothes soaked, hands blistered. Can I really do this? I wondered in the dark, collapsing on the office floor, drenched in sweat. But thinking of grandfather, I gritted my teeth and got up. No giving up. In the midst of it all, I met Scarlett Morales. She appeared like a cool breeze in the scorching desert. Scarlett was a freelance accountant specializing in operations for small businesses. We met through a mutual friend when I needed help organizing my books. Our first meeting was at a cafe near the office. She wore a simple blouse, hair tied back, eyes bright, and a practical smile. "Mr. David, I heard you're starting a business," she said, half joking but with serious eyes. "Let me see your books. Maybe it's still salvageable." We sat for hours. She patiently went through every page, pointing out where I'd miscalculated costs, unnecessary expenses, then suggested ways to reach clients through social media and local networks. No empty encouragement or pie-in-the-sky dreams, just straightforward analysis, realistic steps, and concrete improvements. I realized I was impressed by her persistence. She didn't promise grand things or paint rosy futures. She just sat there quietly, ready to walk with me from the smallest details. When she closed the last stack of papers, she looked at me and said slowly, "I believe in your direction. Not for the money, but because I see your capability. If you don't give up, I'll lend a hand." From then on, we grew close. Late-night work sessions to meet deadlines became routine. Once a big contract nearly fell apart due to budget overruns. We stayed until 3 a.m., Scarlett recalculating every figure, me calling suppliers for discounts. We often talked about keeping promises to clients, not over-promising but always delivering better than agreed. We discussed long-term business, building lasting relationships instead of chasing quick profits. Gradually, a special bond formed. Not love at first sight, but deep respect. Scarlett loved me not for my background or past. She knew everything about Valeria, Diego, my family, but for seeing my perseverance and responsibility. "You don't complain no matter how hard it gets," she said one evening as we sat on the office porch watching the stars. "That's what I love about you." We weathered the first failures together. The initial contract collapsed because a worker was slow. The client canceled. I nearly went bankrupt. The trust fund dwindled fast. Scarlett stayed by my side, encouraging, "Failure is a lesson, David. Next time we'll do better." We persevered, trusting each other. Gradually, business stabilized, clients returned, referred others, the crew settled. After 2 years, the company turned a profit. When things were more secure, I proposed to Scarlett. No lavish setup, no diamond ring, just a simple evening at our familiar diner. "Marry me. I can't promise a perfect life, but I promise we'll build a better future together day by day." My hands shook as I spoke. She smiled, tears falling. "Yes, because I believe in you, and in the future we'll create together, step by step." The wedding was modest, no extravagance, just close friends and colleagues, no sign of my old family. We exchanged rings under Arizona sunlight, vowing to face every hardship together. After 6 years of hard work and dedication, we built a stable business. The company now had its own team, 10 skilled workers, a larger office, recurring contracts with dozens of landlords and complexes. Steady cash flow, growing reputation in the area. We bought a cozy new home on the outskirts of Phoenix, fully equipped. A spacious living room with a fireplace, a modern kitchen where Scarlett loved to cook, and a backyard for our little daughter Lucia to play. Lucia was born 3 years after the wedding, a dark-haired girl with bright eyes like her mother. Holding her for the first time, I cried from happiness. For the first time in my life, I clearly felt peace, self-reliance, and joy that I had built with my own hands on my own path. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of children's laughter echoing from the next room, Scarlett brewing coffee and the two of us planning the day ahead, repair contracts, weekend getaways, or simply cuddling on the sofa. The company is now solid with its own crew and loyal clients. I am no longer the abandoned one. I am the pillar of my own family. But deep down, I know the past never truly disappears. It lurks somewhere waiting for the right moment to resurface. Since grandfather's passing, I have had no contact or meetings with anyone from my old family. No birthday calls, no letters asking how I am, not even polite messages. I deleted Diego's and Valeria's numbers from my phone, and with my parents, I maintained only a polite distance, like old acquaintances who no longer share the same path. Scarlett advised me that way. You don't need them to live well, David. We have each other now. And I agreed. But I understood that some blood ties, whether you want them or not, can still pull you back. They are like invisible threads tightening when you least expect it. I no longer harbor hatred. Time has dulled the pain. But I don't forgive either. I simply move on with my new family. One day, while I was in the office reviewing the maintenance schedule for a large apartment complex, my phone suddenly vibrated on the desk. My mother's name, Gianna, appeared on the screen. I paused for a few seconds, heart beating faster than usual. 6 years had passed. We hadn't really spoken since grandfather's funeral, and even then it was only cold, distant greetings. I took a deep breath and answered. Her voice on the other end was weary and strained, as if holding back tears. David, your father is gone. Cancer took him after a long battle. She paused for a beat, then continued, voice softer. The funeral is tomorrow afternoon at the old house in Phoenix. She spoke briefly without crying, but I could hear the heavy sigh. Cancer? I hadn't known Dad was ill. They had never told me. I was silent for a few seconds, mind reeling. I'll come. I'll arrange to be there right away, I said, voice hoarse. She hung up without another word, as if the call was merely a formality. I slumped into my chair, hands gripping the phone tightly. My father was gone. Hudson Alvarez, the stern man who always favored Diego, was no more. In my heart, there wasn't much attachment left. The years of distance had faded the feelings, but a small part still ached. He was my father, even if he had never truly seen me. I told Scarlett when I got home. She hugged me, voice gentle. Do you want to go? I'll go with you. I nodded. No matter what, this was the final way for me to fulfill my filial duty and close an old chapter of my life. Not for them, but for myself, so I wouldn't live with regret later. We arranged everything quickly, left Lucia with Scarlett's mother, then drove to the old house in Phoenix. Throughout the journey, the atmosphere in the car was so heavy it was almost tangible. But deep inside, I didn't just feel weary. I felt suspense. Diego and Valeria would be there. What would they look like seeing me? What would they say? Those questions piled up, building tension bit by bit, like a storm quietly forming before it strikes. When my wife and I arrived, the funeral was underway in a solemn, dignified atmosphere. The old family home was decorated simply: white roses, a polished wooden coffin in the living room, rows of chairs for guests. We entered calmly, neither joyful, why would we be, nor displaying grief too openly. I wore a black suit, Scarlett a dark dress, arm in arm. People turned to look, whispering, "David's here. Haven't seen him in ages." I nodded greetings but didn't stop to chat. My heart beat harder when I saw my mother standing by the coffin, thinner than before, eyes red. Gianna's gaze lingered on me longer than usual. Surprised, perhaps she hadn't expected me to come, mixed with scrutiny and the strangeness of years apart. She approached, voice trembling. "Thank you for coming. And Scarlett, too." She hugged me briefly, The familiar perfume scent brought memories rushing back. "Are you feeling better, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, as if speaking louder might shatter this fragile atmosphere. She nodded slowly, eyes still tired, then turned to Scarlett beside me. She paused, searching for the right words. "My daughter-in-law looks so beautiful. And how's little Lucia?" Scarlett smiled politely, keeping just enough distance, replying softly and calmly. "She's doing well, thank you. We left Lucia with my mother for the trip." No one said more. The air between us grew awkward, estranged, like people connected only by a faint tie called blood. My eyes instinctively scanned the room, searching for a familiar figure. My heart beat faster, thinking of Diego. The suspense built gradually. Had he changed, or was he still the arrogant man who stood above everyone as before? Soon after, Diego appeared with Valeria. They entered from the back door, looking prosperous and polished, clearly living a different life since they left. Diego in an expensive suit, hair neatly styled, Valeria in an elegant black dress, jewelry sparkling. They had just returned from Las Vegas, I overheard from guests. Around them were acquaintances offering condolences and handshakes, as if they were the center of the ceremony. Diego stood in the spotlight, receiving attention and sympathy, posture confident as if everything was still on the track he believed in. He shook hands, patted shoulders, thanked people politely. Valeria stood beside him, eyes artificially red, clinging to his arm. I watched from afar, bitterness rising. 6 years, and they were still the same, living comfortably while they had once trampled me. When they noticed me, Diego and Valeria turned. His gaze lingered on me, then slid to Scarlett, a mocking smile flashing. They approached slowly, like actors on stage. My heart pounded, tension reached its peak. This was the confrontation after all these years. Diego spoke first, voice laced with familiar contempt. "Oh, David, my little brother's here. Still doing well, huh? You look the same, ordinary as ever." He smirked, eyes flicking to Scarlett. "And this must be your wife? A good match. Not as elegant as Valeria, but it suits you. A life fixing pipes, right?" Valeria chimed in, voice shrill. "I heard you started a little company," she said, lips curling into a half smile. "That's commendable. But compared to Diego?" She trailed off, shaking her head lightly as if the conclusion was obvious. "Still just child's play." Their mocking words cut like knives, belittling me and my wife, implying I was still the inferior man from years ago and Scarlett merely a fitting choice. I felt blood rush to my head. Old memories flooded back. The day before the wedding, them on the sofa, the humiliation. I wanted to shout, to punch him in the face. But I looked at Scarlett. She squeezed my hand tightly, eyes calm. We didn't react, didn't argue, didn't explain. We just stood silently together like a solid wall. That composure made Diego and Valeria even more uncomfortable. They were waiting for a reaction, an outburst, a defense, but got none. Diego frowned. "What, speechless? Or ashamed of your life?" Valeria sneered. "Let it go, honey. We have more important things." They turned away, but I saw the unease in their eyes. For the first time, I wasn't the weak one. Throughout the funeral, I fulfilled the role of a son bidding farewell, standing by the coffin, bowing in prayer, shaking hands when needed. Not affectionate, no long hug for Mom, no talk with Diego, but not overly distant either. Enough to complete the final duty. The atmosphere was stifling. Someone's sobs echoed, the scent of white flowers overpowering. I thought of Dad. He never praised me, but he taught me hard work. Memories returned. The time he taught me to fix the car, only to praise Diego more. It hurt, but I didn't cry. As soon as the ceremony ended, the priest's final words light applause, I didn't linger a minute. No staying for post-ceremony chats, no seeking late reconciliation. Mom looked at me, eyes sad. "David, stay for dinner?" I shook my head. "We have to go, Mom. Lucia's waiting at home." She nodded, didn't insist. Diego and Valeria stood afar, whispering something but didn't approach. We got in the car and left in silence, leaving behind an old family I no longer belonged to. On the way home, desert wind blew through the window. Scarlett hugged me. "You did well." And in that moment I knew I was strong enough to move forward without looking back. The past was closed, my future was here, with my wife and child free. But life isn't that simple. On the way home, I tried to push everything aside. Lucia came rushing to the door, throwing her arms around me with a beaming smile. "Daddy's home." I drew a picture for Mommy and Daddy. Her scribbled drawing, a house with 3 people standing together, warmed my heart again. Scarlett cooked a simple dinner, pasta with homemade sauce, and we gathered around the table sharing stories about the day as if the funeral were just a distant dream. I told Lucia about desert birds, avoiding all the dark parts. That night, lying beside Scarlett, I whispered, "You know, I think I've really closed the door on them." She kissed my forehead. "You're so strong, David. We have each other. That's enough." I slept better than the nights before, dreaming of peaceful days ahead. But the next morning, reality knocked again. A few days after the funeral, while I was in the office reviewing next week's maintenance schedule, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number, but the voice on the other end was polite, with the formal tone typical of lawyers. "Hello, Mr. David Alvarez. This is from Mr. Hudson Alvarez's law office. We have the will reading scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. You are invited to attend." I was silent for a few seconds, heart pounding. A will? Dad had never mentioned dividing assets with me. At first I thought of refusing. Why go back? Why face Diego and Mom again? I didn't need money from him, didn't need anything from that family anymore. But then another thought crept in. I had to go, not expecting to receive anything, but to witness one last time how my father would treat me. This was the final chance to slam the door on the past, to see clearly that he had never changed. I agreed, voice dry. "I'll make time to come." After hanging up, I slumped into my chair, mind reeling. I called Scarlett and told her about Dad's will. She replied, "Are you sure you want to go? I'll come with you." I declined. "I can go alone. This is my business." But inside, tension mounted. What would the will say? The next afternoon, I drove to the law office in downtown Phoenix. A tall glass building, modern and cold in a way that made one feel emotions weren't welcome. I parked, took a deep breath, trying to stay calm before entering. The small conference room quickly enveloped me in a tense, unfamiliar atmosphere. Gianna and Diego were already there, sitting across from each other around the polished wooden table. Mom looked at me, eyes flashing brief surprise, but she didn't stand or approach. She looked far more worn, hair noticeably grayer, still wearing the black dress that carried the scent of the funeral, as if she hadn't yet stepped out of those grieving days. Diego sat beside her, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, holding a steaming coffee cup. His face was calm, even confident, as if this meeting was just another formality in a series of things that had always been destined for him. When he saw me, he flashed a mocking smile, attitude openly derisive. "Oh, little brother, you finally showed up. Thought you'd be busy fixing pipes." His words cut like a knife, treating my presence as superfluous, an unavoidable spectacle. I didn't respond, just sat down across from them, heart racing. The room's air was stifling, like a ticking time bomb. The lawyer, an elderly man with silver hair and an impassive face, entered and closed the door. "Shall we begin?" he said, voice calm and emotionless, completely detached from the strained family ties in the room. He opened the documents and began reading the will in strict legal order. His voice was steady, like reading a financial report without fluctuation. Gianna's portion came first. Mrs. Gianna Alvarez inherits the family home in Phoenix along with $150,000 in cash for retirement and living expenses. Mom nodded, eyes downcast, saying nothing. I glanced at her, catching a fleeting look of unease, but she remained silent. The tension built, my heart pounding, waiting for Diego's part, and then the lawyer continued, For Mr. Diego Alvarez, he inherits the remaining assets, including the used car dealership, 2 rental properties, and cash and investments valued at over $1 million, along with full authority to manage the family business. Diego couldn't hide his satisfaction. Smugness was clear on his face. He smirked, shoulders shrugging slightly as if everything was unfolding exactly as he had always believed and expected. He whispered thanks to Dad, eyes gleaming. Valeria wasn't there, but I imagined how triumphantly she'd smile if she knew. Then it was my turn. When David was mentioned, the room fell suddenly silent, as if everyone held their breath. The lawyer read slowly. The inheritance for Mr. David Alvarez is an old watch belonging to his father, described as a sentimental keepsake with no monetary value. That was it. An old watch, the cheap one Dad wore for work, probably tucked away in some box. I sat frozen, anger flaring in my chest like fire, not because of the material value. I didn't need his money, but because even in death, Hudson had never valued or acknowledged my existence. He left everything to Diego and to me, just a leftover trinket, like a final reminder that I had never mattered. Jana looked between her 2 sons with weary, uneasy eyes, but stayed silent. She didn't object, didn't defend, as if it had all been decided long ago. She just sighed, hands clutching a tissue. Diego smiled wider, patting Mom's shoulder. Dad was fair, wasn't he, Mom? I'll make good use of this money. I wanted to shout, to ask why had he never seen me? But I held back, standing up, voice ice cold. Thank you, attorney. I left the law office feeling empty, steps slowing in the long, cold hallway. Outside, rain began to fall, quiet and steady, as if to add another layer of silence to that afternoon. I understood that the last hope I'd held for a father-son relationship had closed here, not with anger, but with an unchangeable truth. On the drive home, tears fell without me noticing, blurring my vision. I pulled over, hands on the wheel, breathing deeply to regain calm. I whispered, voice low and hoarse, "Why, Dad? Why was it always like this, even in the end?" No answer. Only the soft patter of rain on the windshield and endless silence, like a final closure. I didn't resent, didn't return to demand or contest anything more. I simply accepted that from this moment, all emotional ties to my old family were truly over. When I got home, Scarlett hugged me tightly, as if understanding without needing to ask. A moment later, she said softly, voice full of concern, "Are you okay, David?" Scarlett asked gently, voice worried but tender. "If you want to talk, I'm here. If you're not ready, that's okay too." I leaned my head on her shoulder, telling her everything in detail, voice occasionally trembling despite trying to stay calm. Scarlett didn't interrupt, just listened, hands steady on my back. When I finished, she looked at me for a long time, then said softly, "You've done everything you could. From now on, you owe them nothing. You're free now, David. Not because you walked away, but because they never knew how to value you." That night, I held Lucia close, feeling her steady breathing and small warmth. In that quiet moment, I realized my life was still moving forward, the company running, my little family here, and things worth protecting. This wound might still be deep, but I knew it would heal, because for the first time I had learned to live fully, no longer dependent on recognition from those who had chosen to turn away from me long ago. In the days that followed, I actively pushed the past aside, pouring all my focus into work and the small family I had struggled to build. I woke up at 5 every morning, brewed strong black coffee, and drove to the office. The company now ran steadily like a well-oiled machine. We had a permanent crew, 12 skilled workers handling everything from plumbing to painting and electrical repairs. Recurring contracts from landlords and small apartment complexes came in reliably. A suburban complex needing monthly maintenance. Several rental homes requiring periodic checks. Cash flow was steady, enough to cover salaries, expenses, and even save a little for Lucia's future. I no longer worried about every bill like in the early startup days when each bank call was a nightmare. Now I could sit at my desk, review gradually rising revenue reports, and smile to myself. "I've finally become self-sufficient," I told myself, fingers tracing the black figures on the screen. But work was only part of it. Every afternoon after finishing, I came home earlier, no longer staying out for all-night jobs like before. Scarlett often waited at the door with a warm smile and the aroma of food wafting from the kitchen. We gathered around the table for simple dinners, fresh salads, grilled meat, and homemade bread. Lucia sat in her high chair, playfully wielding a spoon, chattering about preschool in her lisping voice. "Daddy, today I drew our family." The sound of her laughter filled the cozy house, chasing away all fatigue. Scarlett would share about her day, managing books for the company, meeting clients, and I listened, holding her hand under the table. Those peaceful moments made me believe I had truly entered a different life, one without comparisons or contempt. No more mocking words from Diego, no more cold glances from my parents. This was my world, built by my own hands, and it was more beautiful than anything I had ever dreamed. I began enjoying the little things, weekend trips to the park with Lucia pushing her on the swing until she giggled uncontrollably, evenings in the backyard with Scarlett, stargazing under the sparkling desert sky, talking about the future, perhaps expanding the company or having another child. Life flowed calmly like a quiet river after a storm. I no longer dreamed of recognition from my old family. They had become faint memories like an old book on a shelf. Occasionally I thought of the watch in the drawer, Dad's legacy, but I didn't wear it. It was a reminder, but it no longer hurt. I had moved past it. Then one evening, amid that familiar quiet, everything changed. We had just finished dinner. Lucia was playing with toys on the living room floor, Scarlett reading on the sofa. I was washing dishes, mind relaxed with soft music from the radio. Suddenly my phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen. An unfamiliar number, but in a few seconds I knew who it was. Diego. Though I had deleted his number long ago, I still recognized it instantly. My heart skipped a beat. My brother, who hadn't contacted me in years since Dad's funeral. The last time we spoke was at the law office, with his mocking smile still vivid in my memory. Why was he calling now? I didn't answer. I didn't want that call to shatter the peace my little family had. The phone rang a few more seconds, then stopped. I breathed a sigh of relief, returning to the dishes, telling myself it was probably a wrong number, even though deep down I knew it wasn't. But then the second call came just minutes later. The screen lit up again, same number. Lucia looked up. "Daddy, the phone's ringing." Scarlett glanced at me, eyes showing concern. "Who's calling?" I shook my head. Probably a wrong number. But inside, unease crept in. Diego wasn't the type to call repeatedly. The third call followed, insistent and unusual, like an alarm bell. My heart beat faster, my hand trembled holding the phone. Was something wrong? Was Mom sick? Or was he in trouble? That thought made me anxious, like standing before a dark door. The fourth call rang. I almost answered, but stopped. Just ignore it, I told myself, but curiosity and worry surged. By the fifth call, the prolonged ringing made the living room atmosphere suddenly tense. Lucia stopped playing, looking at me with wide eyes. Scarlett stood and approached. "Answer it. Calling this many times isn't a mistake." I took a deep breath, pressed accept, and on the other end, Diego's voice came through, but not the confident, arrogant tone of old. His voice was panicked, chaotic, speaking quickly and haltingly. "Is that you, David? I need your help. Valeria tricked me. She manipulated the documents, put everything in her name, transferred it all without me knowing. The company's about to go bankrupt. Partners are suing everywhere. My reputation is ruined." I was stunned by what I heard, mouth agape, unable to speak. Diego, the one who had stolen Valeria from me, humiliated me in front of everyone, was now begging me for help. For the first time in his life, he had to humble himself and call the brother he had never valued. I spoke, voice trembling but trying to stay calm. "What are you saying?" "Slow down," he continued, voice breaking, almost pleading. "She transferred all the money, signed papers I never read. I didn't know anything, David. I'm broke now. You have to help me." I didn't respond immediately, mind reeling. Old images flooded back. The day before the wedding, them on the sofa mocking me. Now Valeria had betrayed Diego? Justice? Or just a vicious cycle? I only said I needed time to think and hung up, hands still shaking. The living room fell suddenly silent. Scarlett sat beside me, quietly holding my hand, waiting for me to speak. I recounted the entire call, voice breaking, from Diego's panic to the details of Valeria's deception. Scarlett listened, eyes serious, then gently advised, "I think you should help him, David. Not to repay any past debt, you owe them nothing, but to stay true to the man you've become. You're strong and kind. Don't let hatred tarnish that." I pondered for a long time, looking at my wife and daughter, weighing between my current peace, the calm life I had worked hard to build, and doing the right thing. Helping Diego meant returning to the past, facing Valeria, reopening old wounds. But not helping. What then? Letting him collapse as he once let me? That thought gnawed at me. Lucia climbed into my lap, hugging my neck. "Are you sad, Daddy?" Her smile helped me decide. I was no longer a coward. I called Diego back, voice firm. "Brother, I'll come tomorrow." He sighed in relief. "Thank you, David. I'm in Las Vegas." I hung up, heart still pounding. Suspense surged. What would this trip bring? But I knew this was the moment to prove I had changed. The next day, I booked a flight to Las Vegas, Nevada, the city where Diego and Valeria had moved and built their lives over the years. Phoenix Airport was bustling, but I barely noticed. I hugged Lucia one last time before leaving. "Daddy's going on a work trip for a few days. Be good with Mommy, okay?" She nodded, eyes sparkling. "Come back soon, Daddy." Scarlett saw me off at the gate, holding my hand tightly. "Call me often. I'm worried about you." I kissed her and boarded the plane with light luggage but a heavy heart. The flight was short, just over an hour, but I sat motionless, staring at the white clouds outside the window. Las Vegas, the city of lights, gambling, where everything could change in a single hand. Diego had once boasted about life there. Casinos, fancy restaurants, real estate deals. Now what? The plane landed. The glaring Nevada sun hit my eyes. I stepped out, heart beating faster. Diego was waiting in the arrivals area, looking haggard, gaunt, and lost. Gone was the confident, arrogant figure once favored by the whole family. Wrinkled shirt, disheveled hair, dark circles under his eyes. He approached awkwardly and hugged me. "Thank you for coming." His voice was hoarse, like someone exhausted. On the drive in his old beat-up car, not the luxury vehicle I'd imagined, I noticed Diego speaking cautiously, eyes evasive, as if every layer of his former confidence had been stripped away by recent events. He drove slowly, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror. "You've changed a lot. How's your company doing?" I answered briefly. "It's growing steadily. My wife and daughter are well." He nodded but didn't probe further. The atmosphere in the car was stifling, filled with the smell of stale coffee and scattered papers. I asked, "Where's Valeria?" He gripped the wheel tighter, voice bitter. "She's gone. After taking everything." Tension mounted. I imagined him discovering it, perhaps waking one morning to empty accounts. We arrived at the house, a once luxurious villa on the Las Vegas outskirts, now run down with overgrown weeds. Diego invited me in, hands shaking as he made coffee. "Sit down. I'll tell you everything from the beginning." We sat at the kitchen table, papers piled in front of us. His voice broke, eyes red. Valeria manipulated me step by step. At first, she suggested putting assets and business accounts in her name, saying it was for tax optimization, to streamline things. I trusted her, because I loved her. He pushed the stack of papers toward me, forged contracts, bank statements with massive transfers. "My company's on the verge of bankruptcy. Partners are suing left and right over debts. My reputation is ruined." I listened silently, quickly spotting systemic errors Diego had overlooked. Lack of independent audits, overly loose power of attorney, personal and business assets mixed. Basic mistakes, but for someone as arrogant as him who once thought himself invincible. I just nodded. I understand. We need a plan. I outlined one immediately, not emotionally but logically, the way I'd built my own company. First, hire an audit team to review all records, I said calmly. Separate personal and business assets, see exactly what Valeria took. At the same time, contact an independent lawyer to deal directly with involved parties, banks, partners, and police if needed. Diego looked at me, eyes flashing surprise. You know this stuff? I nodded. From my experience. We immediately called an auditing firm in Las Vegas. I searched online, chose a reputable one. Same for the lawyer, a firm specializing in financial disputes. Costs were high, but Diego agreed. Use whatever money I have left. The tension began. I knew this fight wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. This wasn't revenge on Valeria, but justice. For Diego and indirectly for myself. The legal battle began, dragging on for weeks. Those days were hell. Filings, counterclaims, tense meetings with lawyers. We spent hours in the law office, scrutinizing every financial detail and signature. Look at this $50,000 transfer, the lawyer pointed out. Forged signature. We have evidence. On the other side, Mr. Diego voluntarily authorized it. The judge listened, asking detailed questions. My heart pounded, sweat broke out. Diego sat beside me, face pale. After deliberation, the court ruled in Diego's favor. Valeria was sentenced to 7 years for fraud and embezzlement, plus civil penalties, restitution, asset freezes. When it was finally over, Diego rushed to hug me, emotions overflowing. He kept saying thank you, voice breaking through tears. Thank you, David. Without you, I don't know what I'd have done. I stood still in his embrace, neither joyful nor proud. Just a clear calm inside. I realized I had been strong enough to do the right thing, not for recognition or repayment, but to close the past and move forward lighter and more at peace. We left the courthouse. Nevada's sun glared down. Diego held my hand. You're my hero. I smiled faintly. Just your brother. The next day, I booked a flight to Las Vegas, Nevada, the city where Diego and Valeria had moved and built their lives over the years. Phoenix Airport was bustling, but I barely noticed. I hugged Lucia one last time before leaving. Daddy's going on a work trip for a few days. Be good with Mommy, okay? She nodded, eyes sparkling. Come back soon, Daddy. Scarlett saw me off at the gate, holding my hand tightly. Call me often. I'm worried about you. I kissed her and boarded the plane with light luggage but a heavy heart. The flight was short, just over an hour, but I sat motionless, staring at the white clouds outside the window. Las Vegas, the city of lights, gambling, where everything could change in a single hand. Diego had once boasted about life there. Casinos, fancy restaurants, real estate deals. Now what? The plane landed. The glaring Nevada sun hit my eyes. I stepped out, heart beating faster. Diego was waiting in the arrivals area, looking haggard, gaunt, and lost. Gone was the confident, arrogant figure once favored by the whole family. Wrinkled shirt, disheveled hair, dark circles under his eyes. He approached awkwardly and hugged me. Thank you for coming. His voice was hoarse, like someone exhausted. On the drive in his old beat-up car, not the luxury vehicle I'd imagined, I noticed Diego speaking cautiously, eyes evasive, as if every layer of his former confidence had been stripped away by recent events. He drove slowly, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror. You've changed a lot. How's your company doing? I answered briefly. It's growing steadily. My wife and daughter are well. He nodded but didn't probe further. The atmosphere in the car was stifling, filled with the smell of stale coffee and scattered papers. I asked, Where's Valeria? He gripped the wheel tighter, voice bitter. She's gone, after taking everything. Tension mounted. I imagined him discovering it, perhaps waking one morning to empty accounts. We arrived at the house, a once luxurious villa on the Las Vegas outskirts, now run down with overgrown weeds. Diego invited me in, hands shaking as he made coffee. "Sit down. I'll tell you everything from the beginning." We sat at the kitchen table, papers piled in front of us. His voice broke, eyes red. Valeria manipulated me step by step. At first, she suggested putting assets and business accounts in her name, saying it was for tax optimization to streamline things. I trusted her because I loved her. He pushed the stack of papers toward me, forged contracts, bank statements with massive transfers. "My company's on the verge of bankruptcy. Partners are suing left and right over debts. My reputation is ruined." I listened silently, quickly spotting systemic errors Diego had overlooked. Lack of independent audits, overly loose power of attorney, personal and business assets mixed. Basic mistakes, but for someone as arrogant as him, who once thought himself invincible. I just nodded. "I understand. We need a plan." I outlined one immediately, not emotionally but logically, the way I'd built my own company. "First, hire an audit team to review all records," I said calmly. "Separate personal and business assets. See exactly what Valeria took. At the same time, contact an independent lawyer to deal directly with involved parties, banks, partners, and police if needed." Diego looked at me, eyes flashing surprise. "You know this stuff?" I nodded. "From my experience." We immediately called an auditing firm in Las Vegas. I searched online, chose a reputable one. Same for the lawyer, a firm specializing in financial disputes. Costs were high, but Diego agreed. "Use whatever money I have left." The tension began. I knew this fight wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. This wasn't revenge on Valeria, but justice. For Diego, and indirectly, for myself. The legal battle began, dragging on for weeks. Those days were hell. Filings, counterclaims, tense meetings with lawyers. We spent hours in the law office, scrutinizing every financial detail and signature. "Look at this $50,000 transfer," the lawyer pointed out. "Forged signature. We have evidence." On the other side, Mr. Diego voluntarily authorized it. The judge listened, asking detailed questions. My heart pounded, sweat broke out. Diego sat beside me, face pale. After deliberation, the court ruled in Diego's favor. Valeria was sentenced to 7 years for fraud and embezzlement, plus civil penalties, restitution, asset freezes. When it was finally over, Diego rushed to hug me, emotions overflowing. He kept saying thank you, voice breaking through tears. "Thank you, David. Without you, I don't know what I'd have done." I stood still in his embrace, neither joyful nor proud, just a clear calm inside. I realized I had been strong enough to do the right thing, not for recognition or repayment, but to close the past and move forward lighter and more at peace. We left the courthouse. Nevada's sun glared down. Diego held my hand. "You're my hero." I smiled faintly. "Just your brother." After everything concluded in Las Vegas, I returned to Phoenix with a strange sense of relief, as if an invisible burden had been lifted. The plane landed in the late afternoon. The Arizona sun was still blazing, but my heart felt cooler than ever. I was no longer the David of 6 years ago, the one betrayed, humiliated, abandoned. Now I was the man who had chosen to do the right thing, not out of hatred, but out of conscience. On the drive from the airport home, I called Scarlett. "I'm on my way back. Everything's back on track." Her voice was joyful. "Lucia and I are waiting. Come home soon." I smiled, hands gripping the wheel tightly. The familiar life was waiting. My company, my family, the peaceful days I had worked hard to build. I was determined to preserve that peace, no longer letting the past creep in. When I got home, the warm aroma of food wafted from the kitchen. Scarlett was cooking my favorite grilled meat. Lucia rushed to the door, wrapping her tiny arms around my legs. "Daddy's home. I missed you so much." I picked her up, kissed her rosy cheeks. The fatigue vanished. Scarlett came out, hugging me from behind. "You've done everything a decent person could. That's enough." We sat down to eat, sharing stories. I told them about the trial, how Diego hugged me and cried, but skipped the heavy details. Scarlett listened, holding my hand. I don't know if you're proud of yourself, but I always am. Lucia chimed in, talking about the picture she drew at school. I drew Daddy as a superhero. Laughter filled the cozy house, chasing away all shadows. That night I slept soundly, holding my wife and daughter, dreaming of the days ahead. I returned to the familiar rhythm with Scarlett and Lucia, striving to preserve the peace I had labored to create. Early mornings I woke before sunrise, brewed coffee, and drove to the office. The company was now part of my life. Client calls, scheduled maintenance, the crew working in sync. I sat at my desk reviewing revenue reports, smiling at the gradual increases. No more sleepless nights worrying about bankruptcy. Everything was stable now, like a calm river. Afternoons I stopped to buy flowers for Scarlett. Vibrant red roses, a reminder that our love was real. At home we cooked together. Lucia ran around the kitchen singing children's songs. Those moments, simple but precious, made me believe I had truly turned the page. No more comparisons to Diego, no more contempt from the past. This was my life, chosen and built by me. But that peace didn't last long. One evening after dinner, as we gathered on the sofa watching cartoons with Lucia, my phone rang. My mother's name, Gianna, appeared on the screen. I hesitated for a few seconds, heart beating a little faster. The last time she called was after Dad's funeral, just to inform about the will. Why now? I answered. On the other end, her voice trembled, choked, as if holding back sobs. Son, Diego had an accident. The hospital just called. It's serious. He might not make it. Her words struck like lightning. I froze, feeling the ground collapse beneath me. Diego, my brother, who had just stood beside me in court, who had hugged me crying in gratitude, was now in the hospital, possibly dying. Just recently we had sat together planning the future. How could this be? What happened to him, Mom? I asked, voice faltering. She sobbed. Car crash. He was driving alone. Doctors say severe brain trauma. Come right away. I hung up, hands shaking, face pale. Scarlett stood holding my hand. What's wrong? I recounted it, voice breaking. My brother had an accident. He might not survive. Lucia looked up, eyes wide. What happened to Uncle Diego, Daddy? I forced a smile, picking her up. Uncle's sick. Daddy has to visit. Stay home with Mommy, okay? I quickly instructed my wife and daughter, reassuring them with forced calm. I'll be fine. Take care of Lucia. I'll call often. But inside I was in violent turmoil, as if the ground had vanished beneath my feet. Why now? After everything, when he was just starting to rise again, to have a chance at a new beginning. That thought left my mind blank, only a feeling of endless freefall. I didn't think further. I rushed to the car, slammed the door, hands trembling as I turned the key. The engine roared and I drove straight to the hospital in Phoenix, where Mom said Diego had been taken. With a choking anxiety in my chest, not daring to think the worst but unable to push it away. When I arrived, the hospital was brightly lit white, the cold emergency room atmosphere enveloping everything. I ran down the hallway, heart pounding. Gianna was already there, sitting in the waiting area, face ashen, eyes red. When she saw me, she burst into sobs and clung to me as if I were her last anchor in despair. She cried wordlessly, hands clutching my shirt. I held her, voice hoarse. Calm down, Mom. What did the doctors say? She shook her head. He's in a coma, severe brain injury. They're trying to save him. I led her to sit, trying to stay calm, but inside I was in chaos. This was my mother, the one who had stayed silent during Dad's favoritism, who had urged me to sacrifice, now collapsing before me. I remembered childhood, her singing lullabies to me, but then everything changed when Diego succeeded. Now she had only me. Soon after, the doctor emerged from the emergency room, face grave, clipboard in hand. He looked at us. Mrs. Alvarez? Mr. David? We stood, my heart as if stopping. Diego is temporarily out of immediate danger, he said, voice even but reassuring. but the condition is still very critical. Severe head trauma, brain hemorrhage. Everything depends on whether he wakes in the next few days." His words cut like a knife. Out of critical danger, but still bad. I asked, "What are my brother's chances of surviving?" He shook his head. "Hard to say. We'll monitor closely. You can visit now." Mom burst into tears. I supported her into the room. Diego lay there on the bed, machines beeping, face bruised, head bandaged. He looked frail, no longer the arrogant man of old. I stood quietly in the hospital hallway afterward while Gianna completely broke down by his bedside, praying and blaming herself. "It's my fault. I favored him, I spoiled him. God save my son." She no longer held her former hardness. She was just a desperate mother. The following days passed heavily, like a prolonged nightmare. Gianna and I took turns watching by the bed, caring for Diego in his prolonged coma. I called to arrange work with Scarlett. "I have to stay a few days," then returned. By day I sat beside him, wiping his face, changing towels, watching the monitors. Every steady breath became something to cling to, each beep a fragile hope. He had once stolen my happiness. But now, seeing him motionless on the hospital bed, I no longer felt anger, only a quiet pity. Nights fell very late. When Mom dozed off on the long hallway bench, I sat alone, letting memories return. I remembered childhood, the two brothers playing ball in the backyard, him patiently teaching me penalties, laughing loudly when I missed. Then everything gradually changed. As he began succeeding, the distance between us grew. I faded into the background, becoming a faint shadow in my own family. Time passed slowly, tension built hour by hour. Doctors came and went constantly. Each time I asked, the answer remained, "Condition temporarily stable, but he hasn't woken." One afternoon, as Phoenix sunlight, not Las Vegas, shone through the hospital window, two police officers arrived. Uniformed, faces serious. "Mr. David Alvarez, we need to speak with you privately." My heart raced. What about the accident? They confirmed I was next of kin and reported the investigation results. "We've caught the hit-and-run driver," one officer said. From his confession, he admitted being paid by Valeria Cruz to carry it out. "This is an attempted murder." I was stunned by the revealed truth, mouth agape, speechless. Valeria? Even after being convicted and imprisoned, she had left one final malicious act of revenge? She hired someone to run Diego over. How could she? The image of her smirking in court flooded back, but now even more vicious. Mom heard the news and fainted in tears. That demon! How could she? In that moment, I felt a chill. Not from fear, but from realizing how far hatred could spread and destroy, even targeting those no longer able to defend themselves. Valeria hated Diego for the conviction, and she prolonged that pain from prison. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about life. I stood there, hands clenched on the chair, mind reeling. Life's twists. Once she betrayed me, now Diego nearly died because of her. Hatred like a virus, spreading endlessly. When Gianna heard the news, she fainted in tears, and I had to support her to sit down. The hospital suddenly felt even more suffocating, the beeping of the machines echoing like a cruel reminder. Valeria, the woman who had once been my fiancée, who had mocked me on that sofa, had now become a haunting ghost over the entire family. I immediately called Scarlett, voice faltering. "Honey, it was Valeria who hired someone to kill Diego." Scarlett was deeply shocked. "Oh my God, be careful there, or come back to me and Lucia." But I couldn't leave. Diego was still lying there in a coma, and Mom needed me. The tension mounted. Would she stop? Or were there more blows to come? I tormented myself all night, sitting by his bed, thinking about the vicious cycle of hatred. The following days passed like a prolonged nightmare, each hour a test blending hope and despair. Gianna and I took turns keeping vigil, not leaving the hospital for a moment. By day, I sat beside Diego's bed, wiping sweat from his forehead, changing cold compresses, watching every heartbeat on the monitor. Each steady breath became something to cling to, each beep a silent prayer. Mom prayed incessantly, murmuring, "Lord, please save my son." She was no longer the stern mother who had once urged me to sacrifice. Now she was just a collapsed figure, hair disheveled, eyes dark-circled. I remembered childhood, her telling us fairy tales, Diego always getting the bigger share, but she still hugged me when he fell asleep. Now those memories turned bitter. Every evening I called home to Scarlett and Lucia, trying to sound cheerful. "Diego's condition is the same. Does Daddy's girl miss me?" Lucia chattered over the phone. "Daddy, when are you coming home? I made pancakes for you." Her voice made me smile, but tears rolled down. The tension built. Doctors checked daily. Still stable, but no signs of waking. Each time they shook their heads, my heart tightened. I wondered, if he doesn't wake, what then? Hate Valeria? Or regret not forgiving in time? One quiet morning at the hospital, when early sunlight slipped through the window curtains, illuminating the white floor, everything changed. I was dozing by the bed, exhausted after a sleepless night, when I suddenly felt someone lightly touch my hand. A weak, trembling touch. I jolted awake, eyes wide, and froze upon realizing Diego had opened his eyes. His gaze was still faint and hazy, but enough to recognize I was there. He looked at me, lips moving wordlessly, hand gently squeezing mine. My heart pounded with joy mixed with fear, as if afraid to believe this moment was real. "You're awake again? Do you remember me?" I whispered, voice breaking. He nodded faintly, eyes blinking. I hurriedly called the doctor and Mom, hands shaking as I pressed the emergency button. "Doctor, Mom, Diego's awake!" Gianna rushed in from the waiting room, face pale, turning to joy. "My son's awake. Thank God for hearing my prayers." The doctor hurried over, checking quickly. Pulse, blood pressure, reflexes. After numerous tests, scans, labs, the doctor announced with a rare smile, "He's out of danger. The brain is stable, no more bleeding. With time for rest and gradual recovery, he can get better. No life-threatening risk anymore." I exhaled in relief, legs going weak, leaning against the wall. Gianna hugged me tightly, body trembling with choked sobs. She clutched my shirt as if afraid to let go and lose her last support. "Thank you, David. Truly, thank you," she said through broken breaths. "Thank you for not turning away, even though the family hurt you so much. I know I was wrong. I'm sorry, son." Those words tightened my chest. For the first time in my life, I heard genuine remorse in her voice. I hugged Mom back, tears falling on her shoulder, replying softly to reassure us both. "Mom, he'll be okay. Everything will be okay." Diego lay on the hospital bed, eyes open, looking at us, calling us in a weak but clear voice. Just those 2 words, but enough to make the whole room hold its breath. He was alive, conscious, but we all understood the road ahead was still long. The doctor entered, speaking slowly and cautiously. "His condition is stable, but recovery will take a lot of time. He may need long-term treatment and physical therapy." Even so, in that moment I felt something very clear. Hope had returned. Like a thin ray of sunlight piercing the darkest days, not yet warm enough to dispel everything, but enough for us to believe the darkness would eventually recede. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. Diego gradually recovered from being able to eat on his own, at first just thin porridge, me feeding him spoonful by spoonful, to slow walks around the hospital hallway. Each small progress brought more hope. The first time he sat up, we clapped. "You're recovering so fast." He smiled weakly. "Thanks to Mom and you." Mom cared tirelessly, telling old stories to cheer him. I stayed a few more days to help, but then returned to work and my little family. Because I understood my responsibilities lay not only in the past, but in the present and future I had chosen. Scarlett called, "Come home. Lucia and I miss you." I drove back, heart lighter but still worried for Diego. The company awaited. Maintenance contracts, crew direction. Once Scarlett and Lucia joined me to visit Diego at the hospital when he was much better. We brought fruit and homemade cake. Lucia ran into the room cheering, "Uncle Diego, I'm Daddy David's daughter." He smiled, eyes bright. "Such a pretty niece. Come here for a hug from Uncle." Scarlett chatted gently with Gianna. "How have you been lately, ma'am?" Mom smiled. "Thanks to David watching over Diego for me, it's not too hard. My health is still good." Diego took my hand, voice earnest. "David, I'm sorry. For everything. Valeria, how I treated you, letting you suffer. Thank you for not letting hatred decide your actions. You saved me twice. I might need another lifetime to repay you." His words were sincere, eyes red. Gianna also admitted her mistakes. "I was wrong, David. Prolonged favoritism killed family affection in the quietest way. I favored Diego, neglected you, and now even realizing it, I can't make up for the past. I'm sorry, my son." She cried, hands trembling. I listened in silence without blame or argument because I understood some things gone couldn't return. But I kept my own kindness. "Mom, brother, I've forgiven you. But from now on, let's keep some distance. I have my own family." They nodded, eyes sad but accepting. I set clear boundaries for the relationship going forward, choosing just enough care, phone check-ins, birthday gifts, but not returning to sacrificing or enduring as before. No more emergency calls, no more carrying everything. When Diego was discharged, he moved back with Mom to start over, focusing on recovery and rebuilding life slowly. He sold some assets, opened a small shop, learning simplicity. Mom cared for him and they grew closer. I watched from afar, heart at peace. On one occasion, when both Mom and brother visited my family on a sunny Sunday afternoon, everything felt like a complete picture. They brought a gift for Lucia, a cute doll. Mom hugged her granddaughter. "Do you like Grandma's gift?" Diego sat with me in the yard, voice low. "You have a beautiful life. I'm truly jealous." Scarlett chatted gently with Mom in the kitchen. Lucia played carefree with Uncle. I quietly reflected on the journey and realized I had endured more than I ever imagined. From the betrayal right before the wedding, prolonged family favoritism, grandfather's death, the only one who always stood by me, to building my company, meeting Scarlett, having Lucia, and returning to help Diego at his lowest. Each event left scars, but also forced me to mature, to stand on my own instead of waiting for recognition. I understood that family only truly means something when built on respect and fairness, not one-sided sacrifice from someone always yielding. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the old ways, and not every relationship can be mended with emotion. Sometimes keeping just enough distance is the only way to protect yourself and those you love from repeated wounds. People can't choose where they're born or the family they belong to, but they always have the right to choose how to live. I chose to stop at the right time, release toxic ties, and start a healthier life, not just for myself, but for my daughter. So Lucia grows up in a family where love comes with respect, and no one has to trade themselves just to stay. I watch Lucia play, listening to her clear laughter, thinking of the future ahead. I want to teach her about fairness, the strength of kindness, and not letting hatred guide how she lives. My life, from deep suffering to today's simple happiness, is a living lesson I carry every day. And now, with Scarlett by my side, I know I've chosen the right path. A long journey has closed in peace, opening a new chapter, slow, steady, and full of hope.